Sometimes God will put a Goliath in your life to find the David within. I'm sure you've heard that phrase, or if you haven't, Toby McKeehan said it, and I think that it's so true. Not only was it a true story back, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, with good old David and Goliath back in the Bible in ancient Israel, but it's kind of that perfect story between the big bully on the hill against the little guy. And we see it so many times. That's why we always hear about David and Goliath. If it wasn't such a true principle, we would have forgot about it long ago. But you always hear David and Goliath, David and Goliath, David and Goliath. Well, today we're looking at the documentary Survive and Advance. It's Jim Valvano's 1983 story of how his team was one of the lowest seeds in the NCAA championship, so the college basketball championship, and out of 64 teams, they were one of the lowest seeds, and they came and they went on a winning streak and they won the national championship. And it's their story. It truly is a David and Goliath situation. Today we're going to break down 3 points. The first point is you plus motivation equals success. If you haven't seen Jim Valvano's famous cutting the nets down speech, you have to watch it. I have the link attached below to it. It's my favorite speech of all time. It's about an hour long, and he talks about how he has this motivation, how he has this quote: "You plus motivation equals success," everywhere in his locker room, in his house, in his room, in his doghouse, everywhere. Outhouse, in-house, doghouse, everywhere he has this quote. You plus motivation equals success. And that's really the first point, is they had such a belief. That 1983 team had this belief that you wouldn't even believe they had this much belief. They are like, no, we're going to win. We're going to win. We're going to win. And we'll get to it in a second, but their coach, Jim Valvano, drilled it into them. He drilled in that they were going to win the national championship so much that in practice, they would practice cutting the nets down. In college basketball, when you cut the nets down, that means that you won the national championship. You cut them down, everybody gets to take a piece of the string, and then head coach gets to take the net back and say, we won this national championship. We cut the nets down. And they would have a practice every year practicing cutting the nets down. And that shows you the level of belief that he said, we are going to win a national championship. Now, in their season, they didn't have that good of a team. Like I said, they weren't the highest ranked team. They were just an average team. And they weren't even supposed to make the national championship. The tournament altogether. They had to win 2 games just to qualify to get into the tournament, and then they won. I think the 6 games after that. So I think in total they won 9 straight games that they had to win. They had to win every single one of these games. And before that, again, they weren't that good of a team. And so it shows the level of belief. That's something I love about the documentary, is that us in our personal lives, if we don't have that belief, we don't get that far, right? Number 2 is that teams beat individuals. It was pretty crazy that this 1983 team beat a team with Michael Jordan and Sam Perkins, obviously the greatest basketball player ever, and a really good basketball player who went on to go and play in the NBA. They were on the same team. They beat Michael Jordan's team, okay, when he was a freshman. And the next year, he went on to win the national championship. Then they also beat, in the national championship, number 1 ranked Houston, which was like supposed to be the greatest team of all time, which honestly was the Goliath of college basketball. They had the 2 of the NBA's top 50 players of all time. I'm not talking about college basketball, NBA players of all time. They had Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, which if you know anything about basketball, like, you know those two names. And they played back in the 80s and the 90s, right? Even I know those names. I didn't watch basketball back then. I wasn't even born back then, you know? They beat that team, and they were supposed to be the greatest ever, and people said that pigs would tap dance and hogs would fly before anybody beat that Houston team, let alone Jim Valvano's NC State basketball team, which was pretty good. So it shows that even though they had great individuals, Jim Valvano's team, they had a lot of unity. And it's interesting because how they formulate the documentary is they get all of these guys back together at the end, it was a couple of years ago. It was probably their 30th anniversary or something, where they got them all back together. And they were just like old-time buddies. They were laughing, they were crying, they were joking with each other. And I was so impressed with how much camaraderie they had 30 years later after the fact. And it shows in the documentary of at the time how unified they were as a team. And it goes to show that teams always beat individuals out 100% of the time. Because when you're yoked together with somebody else, you can do so much more than you can separate, right? Now, the third point is that you have to have a driver. A team without somebody to drive it, to drive the stagecoach, it's like, where are we going? You don't know where you're going. One of my friends put it the other day. He said, a business has to have a visionary. You have to know where you're going to go. And that visionary with this team was Jim Valvano. And I hope that you're taking each one of these lessons and you're applying it in your own life and in your own business as well. And this driver, he knew, Jim Valano knew where he wanted to take them, right? He had the vision. He said, we're going to win a national championship. And then he was willing to work them super hard and push them hard every single day in order to achieve that goal. Now, way we can look at it in our own businesses is, am I the driver in my own business? If you're the entrepreneur, yes, you are. If you have a partnership, then you need to decide who's going to be the driver in the company. Somebody has to drive you forward, your company forward. I heard it recently by Walter Isaacson, who wrote the autobiography for Steve Jobs, Benjamin Franklin, some of the other founding fathers, and Elon Musk. And he was actually talking about Elon Musk, and he said that Elon Musk talks about, he says that innovation doesn't just happen. We think that things will just naturally innovate. Things will just naturally evolve. Technology will naturally become better. There's a law in the technology realm. I can't remember the name of it, but essentially it's that computing power will get twice as powerful. It's like every 2 years or every 3 years or something like that, and twice as small. So we'll be able to fit twice as much in half the space, right? And they call it some law of whatever, computing. And the crazy thing is that doesn't just happen naturally. It isn't a law of nature. It's that there are innovators that will drive it forward to be able to compute faster and put it in smaller spaces. But if there isn't a driver, and this is what Elon Musk says, he says, if there isn't a driver, the human race will not just stay stagnant, but it will actually go down. And the best example we have of that is look how far advanced the Romans were. They had aqueducts. I lived in Spain for 2 years, and they had Roman architecture everywhere and these massive aqueducts, right? You can go to Segovia, it's called Segovia, and see these aqueducts that are literally 1,000 feet tall, and Merida, and see these 1,000-foot tall aqueducts, and they're just incredible. And then you're like, what happened to the Dark Ages? What happened to all their technology? What happened to the Egyptians? What happened to their technology, right? It's because they had innovators, and then it went down, and they didn't have innovators to continue on that innovation, right? Well, the same in your company. If your driver dies, if you don't have a driver, then you stop progressing as a company. So those are the 3 points I took away from this documentary. This is honestly my favorite documentary. And my challenge to you is 2 parts. 1, go ahead and watch Survive in Advance. It's on ESPN's 30 for 30. I have the link below. And then 2, watch one inspirational movie every single week. And I promise you that when you do, you'll be inspired to do such great things in your own life, because you can see, man, these guys just had a David and Goliath. I'm going through a David and Goliath. I can take on the big Goliath and I can slay that beast, right? I actually have a full-on movie list. There's over 150 movies on it. You can go ahead, check it out below. It goes to my website and it has, again, 150 movies, and you can just watch each of those. If you're like, I don't know which movies to watch to be inspired, go ahead, check out that list, and I'll see you guys next time.